here as they get here, but I know that y'all want to get to your 11 o'clock workshops. So, and I know that Jenny, I've got notifications coming up in the corner of my screen. Jenny will be getting new links out to you. So check your email when this workshop is over, and you'll get everything and get into your 11 o'clock workshop fine. So welcome. Welcome, everybody. So delighted to have you here in this Generosity Now workshop. I am Norma Malfatti. I'm the new director for Evangelical Mission for our Synod. I just started in January of this year and just actually arrived in Minneapolis about 3 weeks ago. Almost a month now. It's March 13th. How did that happen? And so I'm just so delighted to be here and to be with all of you this morning. So we're talking about generosity and generosity now, generosity for what life looks like now. Practices and ways of talking about generosity have not only changed over the last 40 to 50 years. I know the conversations in my lifetime in the church have shifted and changed how we talk about generosity in a congregation. But one of the things that really started me and was life-shifting for me. I read this book. It's called The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist. I was trying to find the book so I could show you the cover, but it's still in a box somewhere. But The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist. And she starts the book in telling this story about how we are in this place of before we ever wake up and get out of bed in the morning, we start with a litany of not enough. I don't know about you, but I hit my snooze button twice this morning because I decided I had not gotten enough sleep. And then if you had a second cup of coffee this morning, it's because you didn't have enough pep going in your day and you needed a little bit more energy. I mean, how many of you, right, just have that litany in your head somewhere about not enough? And so if that's how our days start in framing our day with not enough, how much more does that start to get embedded into our psyche and into our way of living and life, of saying we don't have enough? We don't have enough time. There's never enough time in the day to do all the things we want to do, right? We don't have, we talk about not having enough money. If only we had just a little bit more, we could do X. If only we had just a little bit more, or this bill wasn't so much, we could do Y. And so this place of enough or lack of enough starts to affect us, and it has affected our whole culture, so that we live in this place that, you know, that now we're stuck in this mindset of scarcity, that there's never going to be enough. And yet Bishop Ann started us today by talking about Jubilee, by talking about there is enough, right? This biblical concept of Jubilee, right? Not only that on the seventh day God rested, but every seventh year, people were released from debt and released from prisons. And then every seventh year, so that when you got to 50 years, right, land was returned to people and familial places, because we have a God of abundance. We have a God of more than enough, of an outpouring of generosity and life. And the ways in which God desires for us to live together is in that place that there is enough, that we can be generous, that we can think differently than this litany that the world tells us about. And you can find that all over scripture. So since we're still kind of a small group, I was going to send you out into breakout groups, but we're still kind of small. So I'm just curious for you, if you can stick in the chat box, is to just say, right, for you, in this next, right, 30 minutes-ish that we have left together so that you can get to your 11 o'clock on time, what what are you hoping for in this next half an hour, 40 minutes together? What would be helpful for you? You can pop that in the chat. You can unmute yourself. What are you hoping for? While people are typing and starting to get in there, please feel free. I am happy to have you just unmute yourself and jump in. But how to inspire others to be generous with all aspects of their lives. All right, thanks, Heidi. Yeah, that's one of those pieces. Diane, jump on in.
Here's your book.
Oh, that is the book. Oh, awesome. Someone else has read it.
I haven't read it. I got it from my son who was a pastor for a few years, and he recommended it.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Oh, that's fabulous. Yeah.
Awesome. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here as my stewardship chair, and so I was here to just get some ideas and inspiration. We read Abundance by Michael Ward.
Oh, yes.
And that is a fantastic read. It does specifically talk about stewardship, but it just is so applicable. Well, like many great reads, it's so applicable to everything. So that's why I'm here. So.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Ashley. And we also hear there's another, somebody else is here to think about budgeting for mission partnerships, right? And to think about how we can give beyond our own congregations. So excellent.
I just wanted to add that the stewardship is so foundational and basic, but I feel like the cultural shifting in our congregation because of the pandemic has been really hard to cover the basics. And then you have to cover them in ways that haven't been as accessible to people. So we had a stewardship campaign that was apart from the Redeemer Center for Life. I'm completing an interim at Redeemer Lutheran Church on the north side, Sharon Kelly. And so we primarily had to use the newsletter and Zoom, and with the low connectivity in the congregation. And it doesn't just mean people who can't afford Zoom, it means they really weren't online until the pandemic forced them to be online. And it was just really a challenge. Now, I had said to them, which may have made things even more fearful, that if you do park car and park bike worship, outdoor worship, then you should consider, doing your stewardship campaign outdoors. So that would give us a time to have people in the congregation speak about stewardship, just, some more on the ground engagement that it's sort of customary in stewardship campaigns when we were meeting and work in person, worshiping.
Yeah, right. Everything has changed. Yeah. And the pandemic has impacted everyone, and even people, right? And to acknowledge that, right, people's income has changed too. And so we are in this kind of season, excuse me, I apologize. But as is the time of the pandemic, children and animals continue to decide where they want to be and when they want to be. And so in this time of the pandemic too, I mean, there are literally people who are hungry today who a year ago never had to worry about hunger. There are people who are experiencing homelessness or are worried about experiencing homelessness today that never would have thought about that a year ago. Right. So there's this whole other layer and context to what it means for generosity now. And that might even get Sue a little bit to what you're talking about as, right, budgeting for mission partnerships and giving beyond yourself when thinking about how do we give beyond when the generosity coming to our congregation has shifted and changed?
Yes,
Um,
yes, that's true as well, but they're still not without it.
Yeah, and there's still,
Yeah,
right, and
yeah,
there's still, we should never, so I want to say that even in this time, and even as people's choices around generosity are shifting, so Phil Hirsch, who is the executive director of Christian Community and Leadership in the churchwide organization, and so that's the home area. So he's like my boss's boss's boss at churchwide, and he tells this story. So he used to work in inner city. He was a pastor in inner city New Jersey, and tells this story about a woman who was who was connected to the congregation, worshiped there, and he knew her financial the place where she was in her finances, and yet when they were doing a special drive to help a family in need, she still came and gave $20. And he talks about how he said, no, I can't take your money. I know where your life is. I know, right, the struggles that you're facing. Don't worry about it. And her response back to him was, don't tell me I can't be generous.
mhm,
Don't take this away from me, because this is a way that I can exercise my discipleship. This is a way that I can give back to a community that has meant so much to me. So I think we need to be really careful as leaders of congregations not to take away opportunities for generosity from people.
right.
And people can make their own choices about how they give or what they give, um, but to not invite generosity um, is to say that they have nothing to give,
Right.
and that they are not being permitted to be a contributing member of a community.
Mhm.
And that's not who we are as Jesus people, right? Everyone has something to offer. Everyone has something to give, even if what they're giving is different than the person that sits at the other end of the pew from them.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think what congregations sometimes, I had the person who hosted, we don't, Redeemer right now doesn't have a stewardship minister in their council, and that's a whole other subject. But we did last year, and she became the treasurer, which is fine. We went back and forth because she kept wanting to focus on time and talent. And I said, but we still have to have a narrative and invitation about financial stewardship. So what would you like to say and share about that? Because we thought we would have I can't remember a biblical passage, but we had a theme each week on Zoom that people could load photographs up to um, uh, illustrate the theme, or images, whatever they would like to do. And so of course I thought, well, if we want people to do this, I better start it. So I just took a picture of the Redeemer Garden, and people just swarmed on that, but they wouldn't upload any of their own photographs because I couldn't figure out if the low connectivity or not understanding how to express their own generosity, or other ways they could express their own generosity besides because it was a pledge drive. We were asking for
Mhm.
pledges, or they uh, um, she particularly wanted to share other people's narratives of scarcity, even if they were unconfirmed.
Mhm.
And I don't, people are homeless. Well, do you actually know someone who's homeless? I mean, I just don't understand why our congregants go in that direction unless you are volunteering at the homeless shelter and you speak,
Mhm.
you know, directly to that. But there's a lot of sharing narratives of scarcity that may not be um, personally
Yeah.
you're personally engaged in.
Right, right. But that gets to yep, I see you, Rebecca, right? That gets to that overarching narrative of scarcity and not
Yeah.
enough in our society that we all kind of lean into because we hear it so much.
Right, right.
Yeah. So Rebecca, you were trying to jump in.
Yeah, the story that you told from Phil.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard that also. And I guess I look at that and I think when we don't let everybody give whatever they feel they can give, it's
Mhm.
not meeting a pledge as much as it is, I can do this. I can because I've been given and I want to give back. And
Mhm.
you take away the joy of giving from them.
Yeah.
And that's a true heartfelt gift. And so you know, you can't say no when somebody wants to be a part of accomplishing something together in a big, that's why we say church together is so good. It doesn't matter how much a person gives or where it comes from. It really matters that we're working together to make a difference.
Yeah.
So
I should just say, we didn't have a goal. We just invited people to make a pledge to support the mission and ministry of Redeemer. So it wasn't, that's what they needed practicing.
Yeah, right. And every congregation has a different history with giving and with generosity and with invitations, which is why some of you are here today. And so, what I'd like to do, since now there's a little bit more of us here, and welcome to those of you that have hopped in along the way. Thanks for finding the new link. Thanks for the patience in all of the technical glitches. This is being recorded, so what you missed at the beginning, or if you've got other folks that are that had hoped to be present, Jenny will make sure, Jenny Huff and Bob Hulteen will make sure that they get the link to the video. But what I'm going to do right now is I want to send you out into small groups, and I'd like you to talk about what's working in your conversations around generosity in your congregation. For as many times that we might have hiccups along the way, there's also things that are going really well. So I'm going to send you into small groups for about 5 minutes to talk about what's going well. So give me just a moment, and I'm going to send you out. All right, I'll see you back all. I'll give you like a 2-minute warning before we come back. And as well as, you know, obviously take some time, introduce yourselves, say where you're from. Yeah, so I'll see y'all in a few minutes. This is the weirdest part of it all, right? Is then like you're snatched back in to the main room. Who's in the middle of a sentence? It's always the way, always the way. Yeah. So, was there anything, what did you hear? Was there something that you heard that was going really well that you want to lift up from your conversations?
I was
Oh,
impressed.
Diane.
Oh, sorry. Who's going?
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, because I was going to talk about you anyway.
You know, it's just good to hear the different perspectives of, you know, of giving and approaches and that. So I thought that was interesting.
I was impressed with how Diane explained how Valley of Peace,
Valley of Peace.
Valley of Peace, excuse me, keeps trying They keep trying different strategies to relieve some unexpected expenses in the life of the congregation. They just keep
Yeah.
trying different strategies.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And go ahead, Diane.
Well, and we've gone through some changes over these past several years, as most congregations have, but our pastor, we have a wonderful young pastor. She's been there 3 years now, and prior to that, we had a pastor for like 4 or 5 years, and it just, so every time you get a change like that, you get new perspective and fresh ideas, and I think that change can be good that way. Hard sometimes, but good. And so she's brought to the table some really nice perspective and good ideas as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Right. And just the invitation in my small group, Ashley was sharing at her congregation, they've started to ask again for the full, right. And really intentionally ask
She's my pastor.
around. Oh,
She's that young pastor I was talking about. Yeah.
yeah. Right. And I think right. And that's one of the things that makes a big difference is asking and inviting people in to generosity. And when we ask, right, one of those things that we need to be clear about, and Bishop Svenningson mentioned this when she was speaking earlier, was that we have to be clear about what's our purpose. What are we about here at our congregation, and what's God calling us to do? Because when you invite people to generosity and to give to the ministry and mission of your congregation, no one gets excited about budgets. I hate to tell you, and all of you that, right? Somebody asked about budgets, Sue asked about budgets, but nobody gets excited about it unless you're an accountant, right? And then, right, all those spreadsheets and things get you going in the morning. But what's the vision? Where are you headed? What's the ministry and the life that God is calling your congregation into? And so if that's something that your congregation, that your leadership is able to articulate, if in when you do your season of invitation, whatever you call that season of invitation, to invite pledges, when you do that, are you asking people, the people that you might ask to do like a temple talk or a mission moment, whatever language you put around that, do they know what that vision is? Are you asking people who have grabbed hold of that vision or can speak to an aspect of the vision? Not just to say, right, I'm going to use the congregation I belong to in New York as an example, that not just to say, hey, we did 452 loads of laundry. So my congregation, we did a ministry called Loads of Love, where we would go to a local laundromat, and we had some community partnerships. So we gave out vouchers all over the place to a couple of community agencies, but then we would just have extra quarters there, and we paid for people's laundry. We gave them enough quarters to do several loads of laundry and dry, and also had dryer sheets and detergent for people who needed even that. And rather than just saying, right, Denise, who coordinated the ministry, rather than just saying we did 452 loads of laundry last year, which is exciting, right? For our little congregation, where about 70 people came to worship on a Sunday, right? We did 452 loads of laundry. That in and of itself is exciting. But then to tell the stories of the people and the lives that were being changed, like the mom who came in one week in September. So this was pre-pandemic time. She came in September with her vouchers, and she said to Denise, in this moment, you're making it possible so that my kids have clean clothes to go to school, and they don't get made fun of for smelling, because that was the place where that family was in. And so we made it possible for kids to be bullied a little bit less, for their life circumstances, or the family that would come in and say, you're making it possible. We're washing our sheets and our blankets for the first time this year, right? And because to pay for regular laundry and all of those sheets and blankets and all of those things was overwhelming for them. And so we gave them a clean place to sleep. That makes a difference. That starts to get people saying, oh my gosh, that's the kind of difference this is making. Because 452 loads of laundry, like I could do 452 loads of laundry a day sometimes, right? It feels like laundry never ends. But to tell those stories and the difference that it makes, because we don't think about that. I don't know about you, but like I do laundry when I'm like, oh, okay, I've got no clean socks left. I need to make sure I do laundry today. That's entirely different when you're talking about families who are wearing clothes that aren't clean every day. So that's one of those pieces. And I think the other thing, and this gets into the budgeting question, Sue, when you're talking about your budget and you're building your budget for the next year, to also think what's possible. What might be the new exciting thing that you're being called to do in the next year? And always have a stretch goal, because then that invites people to greater generosity. Because, right, when you're introducing things and you're talking about planning for the next year and inviting people to generosity, is to say, and if we see an increase in our giving by $5,000, right, using my congregation in New York as an example, we are going to be able to do laundry twice a month. Or if, we'll be able to, we also had a free community meal. And we're going to be able to have free community meal twice a month, not just once a month. Or if you're stretching out into something different, right? To think about where God is calling you to be in your neighborhood, to be about the ministry that you're being called to do. Because if you're just going to do the same thing next year, right, you're just going to copy over and see where you can slash the budget a little bit, because the pastor's salary is going up a little bit and health insurance is going. If that's the space where you're thinking every year, well, then why do you need to increase your generosity? I could just give the same pledge that I gave last year, because we're not looking at how God is calling us to grow in generosity as a whole congregation, about the ways in which we engage. So that gets a little bit into some budgeting pieces. And I want to mention one other thing before I go to some specific resources for you to take home and to dig into. So we hear a lot about tithing in the church, and we talk about tithing, and people have talked about tithing in different ways. And so I'm going to ask you, what do you think is like the average amount that of someone's income, of a household income? What do you think is like the average amount, or the kind of the technical term? It's not average, it's median, right? So if you're looking at like a bell curve, what's at the top of the bell curve? What do you think is that percentage amount? Just toss a number out. 3%, Diane? Diane's thinking 3%.
3%.
Ooh, Rebecca, 1%. Yeah. Or 2%. Yeah. 2%. Yeah. So they say that for us in the ELCA, our median, right, so that top of the bell curve, is about 0.6%. 0.6%. So if you're talking about tithing, which is 10%, it is astronomically impossible for someone who's giving less than 0.6%, right? So less than 1%, to get to 10%. To talk about tithing brings on feelings of shame, embarrassment, overwhelming, right? Like, how am I ever going to get there if I'm not even at 1%? And so in today's culture and context, talking about tithing is a little bit different. Although, right, Rebecca, you were right though, like 2%, we do give away like 2% of money, right? Like, so we are giving 2% of our income away, but only 0.6 is going to the church. Yeah.
Right. I was gonna just say that it's based off of your income and not all your assets. That's the difference too. Because
Oh, yeah.
people, it's just on income. So sometimes we get gifts in other ways. And are we reciprocating in the tithe in that manner? Maybe a different way. You know, it's hard to measure time and talents.
Mhm.
But monetarily, that's what the Lutherans are. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And you should all know, I'm going to out you right now, Rebecca. She's our regional gift planner. So people that think about not just your regular weekly giving, but people who are planning to leave gifts to the church after their death, or pre-planning some of those gifts beforehand. So she's someone you might want to have a conversation with. And if you've got an email address, Rebecca, or something you want to pop in the chat so people can connect with you if that's
I'd be glad to do that. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Always happy to lift up the leadership of others who are having these generosity conversations. So one of these resources, and I'm going to drop this file into the chat, and I will also send it out. Oh, I'm not sure if I might have disabled that. So let me just see if I can do that. Oh, I can do that. I will, I can't do that. That's going to be too complicated for me to figure out right now. But I will send you a list of some resources, right, when all of this is over. So that, right, I'm just going to do a reply all from the email that I sent y'all with this new link, with a list of resources for you. One of them is this book, and it's called A Spirituality of Fundraising. Are you reading this the right way or backwards?
That's right.
Okay,
That's right.
great. And so A Spirituality of Fundraising by Henry Nouwen. Henry Nouwen, if you don't know him, he was such a deep thinker and spiritual person, and people that people look to for a lot of wisdom and a lot of spiritual guidance. And somebody put together this little book, and it's a really thin little book. So you can read it in an afternoon if you want, or read it over a couple of days and reflect on it. And he talks about fundraising as ministry. And so I just wanted to read a little quote from you as we shift into this next section. So what Henry Nouwen says is, from the perspective of the gospel, fundraising is not a response to crisis. Fundraising is not a response to crisis. It is first and foremost a form of ministry. It is a way of announcing our vision and inviting other people into our mission. Vision and mission are so central to the life of God's people that without vision, we perish. And without mission, we lose our way. Right? If that proverb, right? I think it's Proverbs 29, right? Without a vision, the people perish, right? And and vision brings together needs and resources to meet those needs. Vision also shows us new directions and opportunities for mission. Vision gives us courage to speak when we might want to remain silent. Vision gives us courage to speak when we might want to remain silent. So when we seek to raise funds, we are not saying, please, could you come help us out? Because lately it's been hard, right? And I know we can all say that, but rather we are declaring, we have a vision that is amazing and exciting, and we are inviting you to invest yourself through the resources that God has given you, your energy, your prayers, and your money in this work that God has called us to. That's what generosity is. That's what financial stewardship is. And that's what all of stewardship is, right? For me, I see stewardship as how we live our entire lives with Jesus at the center. So it's all of the decisions we make in a day, not just how much we're giving to the church, right? But when my mom was alive, I used to tell this story. I've got to figure out how to tell it now. But my mom, borderline diabetic, and every time I went to the grocery store, she wanted me to get donuts and cookies. And so when I spent money at the grocery store, how was I stewarding my vocation as daughter and primary caretaker? How was I stewarding my relationship with my mother so that we could still live together in a way that was healthy? How was I stewarding our resources together? Right? All of that was stewardship. And that was just going to the grocery store, right? For our regular weekly, picking up the ingredients for dinner every night. Yeah. So, so I really commend this book to you, right? Ashley's already spoken very well about abundance from by Mike Ward, which is another book. And then here's this book. It's a great little book. So this is specifically the time of offering. And this is a great little book. It's called Fruit for Celebrating the Offering by Melvin Amerson and James Amerson. And I was in a workshop with Melvin shortly after this book came out. He's in the Methodist pastor. And all it is little stories and little ways to go about inviting people at the time of offering. Right? So whether we're talking about digital church or we're talking about when you regather in person, what happens when it's time for the offering? Do people just sit down and just wait and we listen to the choir? Or does the pastor or a lay leader in the congregation invite people to a time of generosity and prayer? One of the places where my mom worshiped, particularly in the pandemic, is the Washington National Cathedral. She worked for the Episcopal Church for a long time, and that was still home base for her. And Randy Hollerith, who's the dean of the cathedral, this is what he says almost every Sunday: walk in love as Christ loved us, an offering and sacrifice to God. Right? He's just got that rhythm to invite people in this time of generosity. And so you might not use all of these or any of these. Some of them are connected to scripture passages, which are really helpful. But it might inspire you in a way that you can think about, what can I say? How can I invite people right now and in this moment in worship? And how many of you in digital worship are inviting people to give offering? All right, excellent, excellent. That was that not every congregation was doing that, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, but having a time of inviting people. And there are congregations out there. If you've got people coming to church that aren't members of your church right now, people are sending in gifts or finding new ways to give because they've been invited to generosity. And there are people that aren't even members of congregations that are starting to give and participate in the life of the church and participate in this life of jubilee and abundance that we live in as Jesus people. So I just want to make one quick note. I don't know if you heard like the 18,000 dings that have been happening on my side of the computer. But I can tell you that workshop session 2 is going to begin at 11:30 because of all these technical glitches, and you should be checking your email for a new link. And it will pop up in your email. So we're going to go for about 15 more minutes, depending upon questions, so that you've got a good break that you can get up and stretch and maybe refill your water bottle or coffee cup if you haven't had enough coffee this morning. So I want to share with you a couple of resources that you can participate in, not just with books, right? Because you can always read a book, but also to think about some ministries that your congregation might want to participate in. So the first one is Stewardship for All Seasons. You might have seen that in the e-news that have come out, and we're just starting to do that. Stewardship for All Seasons is a 2-year, right, 1 year, and then we hope people sign up for a second year, but a 2-year process that first and foremost helps a congregation rethink and re-energize their season of invitation to generosity. right? So whatever that pledge season is. Oh, yay, right? Faith has already participated in Stewardship for All Seasons. So Ashley,
Yeah.
you want to say something about that? And
Well,
about how that, yeah.
I originally joined training a few years ago with our previous pastor. A couple of us went and we started it, and it just, as we dropped the ball. And so now a few years later with a new pastor, we are using this, like this is our go-to handbook. This, and along with the amazing stuff that that Mike says in the abundance, this is like our game plan draft. You can see all my tabs. It just really, I am the stewardship chair. And when I was asked to be the stewardship chair, I actually told my pastor, I have no idea what I'm even doing. And he's a brand new pastor too. And so we laughed, we'll figure it out together. And so our congregation is using this, and it's just, like you said, Norma, it's kind of your it's your blueprint for your stewardship drive.
Yeah.
So,
And right. And then what goes along with that, not just that blueprint for the season of invitation, but then, right, there's intentional time spent thinking about, so where is God calling us? Where are we headed? What's that? Where are we looking to stretch and grow in the ways in which we do ministry in our community? And so it helps your leaders start to articulate and catch hold of that vision. Stewardship for All Seasons, I think, also right, brings more people along the way. So it's not just, right, your maybe reluctant stewardship team, but also your council and also other leaders along the way. So it's this place of invitation. And then, and for congregations that come back for a second year, in addition to that intentional season of generosity, then there's some specific pieces around that also can include doing estate gift planning and right, kind of the work that Rebecca does, or doing some strategic planning, or it could be around debt reduction, or it could be a capital campaign. But to help your congregation, if there's something more that your congregation is looking to do or is being called into. So I think it's the congregation I belong to in New York did it. We have never seen such a streamlined and well thought out and well articulated season of invitation than when we did Stewardship for All Seasons.
And I have to say, we originally joined it because we were, I don't want to say struggling financially, but for lack of a better word, that's what we were. That's why we originally looked into it. Whereas our neighboring, another church in our neighboring community was a thriving church financially, and they were doing renovations. And so that's why they joined. So it's for all congregations.
Yeah.
No matter where you might be. It's like you said, it's more than just finances.
And Ashley, honestly, that's really, what we are here to back you up with.
Yeah.
Both Norma and I, we're resources of that also, because I work with Stewardship for All Seasons. I believe Norma does too, through the Synod. And so consequently, that we support that and we'll help you out. So don't think you're ever on your own. Okay.
Yeah.
Because we're here to support you.
Yeah. It's been great.
Absolutely.
So far. Thank you.
Excellent. So one more resource I want to share with you, and then we'll have an open time of questions. And this is going to be a share screen kind of time. So this is brand new, brand new. And let me get back to Zoom. I wanted to make sure I was on my right page. So this is Resourceful Servants. So there's a whole Resourceful Servants website that has all sorts of things for seminarians to be learning, for rostered ministers to be learning, right? Rostered ministers, we have an opportunity, pastors, there's an opportunity that you can apply to for a savings matching program, and particularly newer pastors, for them to build, right, that savings, that 6 months of savings that they say we should all have in our bank accounts and our savings accounts, this is a way to get you help started, as well as some links to some other places. And then this is the place for congregations. And this is the place where I'm at right now. It's on the track project page. Now, I do not have the information to log in, right? That user profile piece. So I can't show you all the details, but here's what resourceful servants can help you do. I'm going to click on this dashboard place right here, this dashboard. And you and a small group of people in your congregation can do a self-assessment around what are your accounting practices, your financial practices, your HR practices, your risk management, and your stewardship. So if I go to the practices here, and I say, okay, so we're going to talk about the accounting practices. You're going to do a self-assessment, right? So this might be like maybe your congregation's treasurer or your finance chair doing this together, or your bookkeeper saying, so we have an accounting system that can track income and expenses and produce reports. You could say, we do that practice well, right? An annual audit, right? We do the practice, but we need some improvement. Budgeting and accounting, right? You can fill all of this out. And then, right, like I can go next. And now I'm taking to finances, right? And it asks all sorts of questions, right? How do you deal with financial shortfalls, or tax compliance, or property management plan, computer asset management, including hardware, software, and networking, right? Does your congregation have a plan for making sure that your network, that your Wi-Fi is secure, that you've got a way in order to assure that all of the computers are safe from malware and viruses and attack, and a regular way to update, a regular cycle of updating software or hardware, right? These are the questions that it's asking, these kinds of practices. HR, right? Bishop Svenningson spoke this morning talking about, right, all of these kinds of administrative things are part of our vitality, are part of the ways in which we live as Jesus people, to ensure that we can be focused on the things we want to really be focused on, right? Because we don't want to, right? So I'm gonna say this right here: a payroll processing system, a congregation in upstate New York, they did not have a healthy practice because they didn't use a payroll company. They did their own payment, they did their own withholding taxes and sent the money on to the IRS by themselves. They ended up getting themselves in a pickle and owed the IRS $76,000 because they were not paying the withholding tax to the IRS in a timely manner. That was huge for them, because now all of a sudden, how are they going to do ministry and mission when $76,000 was half their budget? How are they going to pay that back, right? So these are ways in which you and your congregation can look at some of these administrative practices, and see where you can have opportunities for growth. And they've got ways to help you with that. And they've got some resources to help you. So I'm gonna go here. So around these congregations, I'm gonna go here to human resources. And I'm gonna go to pay standards. I'm just picking something random. They've got a whole sheet here, a whole page here that talks about compensating employees fairly and legally, as well as some resource information. And of course, on the Synod website are always the current compensation guidelines for pastors, deacons, and lay folks. So you can also go there, but you can track your project progress as you grow in these administrative things. So I'm going to stop the share there. The link to that page, the link to a couple of other things, that's all in the handout sheet that I've created for you, so that you'll get all of that. You didn't need to copy anything down. So in these last couple of minutes, my phone keeps dinging, and I think it's making sure I got the alert about we're starting at 11:30 for second workshops. Yeah, so as you think about all of that, so questions, things that you still want to learn about, things you still want to know in these last couple of minutes together.
I think it was a great, I love your talk about vision. Congregations need to have a vision. Number one, if they are thinking about their members leaving gifts to them legacy wise, the vision has to be big enough that they're going to leave it to them and not to somebody else. Because if your congregation doesn't have the joy and the vision of seeing something bigger and accomplishing that, they will leave it to someone else first. So
yeah,
important to think about that.
And to piggyback on that, if your congregation doesn't have those good administrative practices, right, I've also heard stories of people who might leave, $2 million to a university when they die, but nothing to their church, or make those kinds of major gifts. And that's because they don't think that their church knows what to do with the money or has good administrative practices, even though they might be committed to what God is doing.
And that really comes back to like gift policies and bylaws and things like that. And that's where I think you again can help, but that's where a gift planner really helps in churches in starting an endowment and growing the endowment.
Yeah.
But I think the resources are awesome.
One thing that we did as a committee, not just myself, but we wrote handwritten thank you notes to everyone that donated during when we were closed, or just a certain time frame. And we had so many people that just like, thank you so much. I mean, it took a while, but the handwritten notes from myself and Pastor and our committee were just really well received.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder, Ashley. Oh my gosh. And Pastor Chick Lane is a pastor in this synod. How I could ever forget to say, right? Like, Pastor Lane, he wrote kind of the Bible on generosity. It's called Ask, Thank, Tell, if you haven't seen it. And I've said this to Chick's face, so I'm not talking out of turn, but I really think it's tell, thank, ask, or thank, tell, ask. Right? I think thanking you can never thank someone enough for their generosity. Never thank anyone enough. So when you're sending out quarterly statements to members of your congregation, to just as they're tracking their own giving, and especially at the end of the year, right, that their giving statement, so they've got it for their taxes, should always be thanking them and telling them a story of something that the difference that it made. Telling the story of what you did with their money is so critical. And even at the congregation that I belong to in New York, we had just started this practice right before COVID, and then we took it into COVID times, but quarterly having a Sunday where it was all about telling the stories of the ministry and the mission and the difference and the impact that we were making in the world. Well, thank you, everybody. I am here. I'm available to you as a resource. I'm happy to come, and whether it's a one-on-one, like you just want to pick my brain for a little bit, or you'd like me to come to your stewardship team or your council to talk about generosity or any of the other things that I do, I'm happy to do that. It fills my heart with joy when I get to be with other people and get to dream with other people about what God is up to in their community. So I'm happy to do that whenever it's possible, whether it's over Zoom or when we're in the safe times, showing up in person. So blessings to you, blessings as you invite other people to generosity. Oh, thank you. And thank you for taking this time when you could be outside. Thank you for being here this morning. And you should all have a new link in your inbox for your 11:30 workshop.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thanks,
your input.
Norma.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody. Bye.